Welcome back for another preview video. Today I'm going to show you a game about secret recipes. It's a game about deduction where players trying desperately to be the favorite of grandma who is passing her recipe book to family members and friends, and you have to prove yourself so that you are the recipient of this secret book of recipes, which is going to be actually your desire and your sole purpose to acquire it. So basically players are playing the game trying to make a deduction in order to trying to understand what are the four secret ingredients that each player has, including yourself. You know only for yourself, and you start making giving clues. You want to give good clues so that people trying to make good guesses about you, and trying to also through the process of deduction understand what are the four secret ingredients of the other people. The game uses a very interesting system where you just point out to a grid of 3 by 3 where you have different ingredients. There are 9 total ingredients, and you're going to give clues based on a column or a row saying that your secret recipe has one of the 4 ingredients, and let's say you're focusing on the first, the second, the third, or the fourth in the slot on your recipe book, and you're going to say that this one that I'm focusing, the second one for example, has or doesn't have a specific type of ingredients from the column or the row, and also even more interesting, has more or less weight than the specific ingredients shown on the highlighted column or row that you're selecting to give your clue out. The ingredients are 9 in total, and they have different type of weight in weight units, all the way from mint and strawberries to apples and honey, and of course flour and cream, which is the heaviest. And based on this information you're trying to give out good clues so that people can make good guesses about your secret ingredients, and understanding also what other people are giving us clues so that you can rule out what they are, what you're excluding from your personal board, because on your personal board you have all your yourself, your 4 ingredients, but also you have recipes of the other players, and you're trying now to find out what the others are having as a secret ingredient. And all this is done in through 2 phases, because when you're the active player, the first phase is as you're going to see, the phase where you're going to give a clue, and the second phase is the phase where you vote, which is optional. And the voting phase is a good opportunity for players to gain a lot of victory points following the clues from the deduction that they have done. Very interesting game, very visually appealing because it has beautiful art, gorgeous looking desserts. I really want to go to the bakery, to the pastry and shop and trying to get some of those as soon as possible. They look beautiful, they have vivid colors, so the production is really nice, but also functionality wise, the dry erase markers, everything is in where it should be in its place, and it gives a very good vibe and flow for the game. So join me at the table, I'll show you how the game plays. It has very interesting gameplay, very simple rules, but it has a lot of thinking about the deduction and how to get the most out of it, and find out the secret recipients of every other player, and gain of course the most chef points, the most victory points, to impress grandma and be the one who proudly receives the recipe, the book with the secret recipes. Let's see how the game plays. The game is running on crowdfunding, so I'm going to add the link in the description on the video below so you can find out more. I'm going to add the timestamps in the description of the video so you can quickly jump to components, to different to scoring, to different parts of the video. And at the end of the video I'm going to come back with some final thoughts about my first impressions from playing the game. So let's see first of all how the game plays. Grandma, the best baker in town, has decided to retire from baking and pass on her book of recipes which she has carefully selected and perfected over the years. Are you interested? Well, it looks like you're not the only one, as the family and friends are all secretly hoping the book will be theirs. Grandma has decided to put you all to the test. She has sent out letters containing recipes to all interested parties, but wait, it looks like the letters only contain parts of the recipes. Can you get the missing information from the family and friends by trading in some of your information? Prepare for a series of deciphering clues and sealing pacts to see who will impress Grandma the most and become a worthy successor to receive her precious recipe book. At the start of the game, each player receives 1 or 2 pieces of the recipe with 4 hidden ingredients that only they know themselves. The goal of the game is to impress Grandma and score here victory points. You can do that by discovering other people's ingredients. This moves you forward on the score track, and by communicating your ingredients so that other people discover them. This marks the progress you're making in making your part of the recipe and brings you points and other bonuses on the point tokens. These points are revealed at the end of the game, and the player with the most victory points is the winner. First of all, let's familiarize ourselves with the components of the game. Again, this is a prototype. I have made a separate prototype unboxing where I focus more on the aspects of the prototype that you see in front of you. It looks really, really nice, but still it's a prototype, so take that in mind. Things may change, may further improve, and so on. First of all, we have the central board, which is this one over here. The central board is a board where you have 2 main aspects. You have the victory points track on the right, and you have the actual grid where you place and do the deduction, focusing here. It's very nicely illustrated, as you can see. It has grapes, apples, strawberries, walnuts, and all flour and all sorts of things you expect on a baking on a table, on a cooking table for baking this beautiful dessert. The next thing we have is 25 recipe ingredients. These are these ingredients here. Okay. These ingredients come in 9 different ingredients on the front side of the tiles, so you have different things. As you can see, also the icons are here. The different ingredients from apples, honey, flour, cream, strawberries, walnuts, eggs, and so on. And you have exactly the same icons on the small token. So these are the recipe ingredients, 25, 9 different ingredients on the front side of those tiles, and this is the back. Okay, slightly smaller than this one, which are the pantry ingredients. Okay, and you see these are the larger squares that go in the center. They have darker good background, again the same icons, 9 different ingredients on the front, and they are called pantry ingredients. Okay, we have the pantry bag, which this bag is going to get all these pantry tokens over here. Okay, and also some 3x3, 9 in total during setup. More on that later. We have the active player basket, which goes from one player to the other when they are the active player. We have various wooden markers, 3 clue markers. Okay, if something is part of your clue, that it's included or not included. Okay, and you use these ones to indicate on the row. Okay, saying that you have this in this row, for example, or so on. More on that later. You have a 2-sided clue type token. When you give clues, you can either give clues saying that a clue is about the type of the ingredient or about the weight of the ingredient, which can be in different units. We'll discuss more on that later as we explain the game, but just to say briefly that the different ingredients have different units weight. For example, grapes have 1 unit weight and flour has 5 unit weights, as they are indicated by the number of weights at the bottom left of the depiction. Then we have 10 victory points. These are supposed to be kept from the players hidden until once earned, until they are revealed at the end, showing Grandma's glasses, which are actually the icon for the victory points, and are accumulated and added on this score track there. And the last thing that we have, of course, are the main boards. We have 4-player boards. They have gorgeous art at the back. Okay, we're going to describe how these work in detail, so I'm not going to focus on the anatomy of those. These are dry erase, so you use the dry erase markers to do so. Also, in addition, each player has 1 matching. Okay, this is not matching, but let's say this is my matching if I was the green player. Besides my player board, I have 1 matching recipe board, which this I keep in front of me like that, and this is facing the players. And there are nice stands. Let me just focus for a moment so that I can show you the stands of the players. So you keep them in front of you and players do not see what you're making note of. There you go, they sit on stands, they have a tilt. Okay, so you're just facing the back so that you can see the art, but you can imagine that this is going to be facing somehow like that towards you, and you're going to be taking notes on the board away from the eyes of the other players. Okay, so again, recap. Each player is going to take their player board, their recipe board, it's the same for each player, okay, and their voting board, which is used for voting. All these are dry erased glossy materials, so you can draw with your marker and then just dry erase them at the end of the game. In addition, each player has one chef hat, which counts the victory points on the track. Plus, we have 4 think markers in discs matching the color of the player, plus 9 fingerprint tokens to indicate what you have already given us a scene from the ingredients, again matching the player color. So each player color is going to take everything in their color: think markers, fingerprint markers, player boards, etc. Okay, and of course the last thing that you need is one dry erase marker for keeping notes. So there you have it. These are all the components of the game. Game setup. It is suggested that players sit 2+2 around the table, 2 players on each side, because this orientation of recipe boards is easier to track on the board players. Of course, this is not necessary, but it's recommended. So the following steps are followed when we do the setup. First, we place the game board in the center of the table, as you see in front of you. Some important spaces on the board. We have the large 3x3 for total 9 spaces here, which is the pantry shelves. Okay, so this area here is the pantry shelves. We have the recipe shelves, which are the smaller squares around the 3 sides of the grid. So 3 plus 3 plus 3 for a total of 9 ingredients in total. These are called recipe shelves. And we have the pantry, which is everything, including both the pantry shelves and the recipe shelves. The second thing we do is randomly we draw 9 pantry ingredients from the bag and place them in the remaining ingredients in the spots, so we fill in the 3x3 grid, okay, and we populate this. So before we start the game, we take those 9 plus those, okay, so I've already done the setup to make it easier, large pantry ingredient tiles, okay, we give them a good shuffle, and from there we take and place a total of 9 face-up pantry ingredients in the center 3x3 grid. Okay, we keep the bag with the remaining ones handy next to the playing area. The next thing we do is we shuffle the recipe ingredients, which are the small ones, okay, these ones, face down. It's important that all recipe ingredients remain hidden during setup, and then we assign 4 random ingredients to each player. So each player, as you see, they have the recipe board. Let me show you up close. This is the recipe board, okay. It has 4 grids and 4 slots for recipe ingredients, the smaller squares, okay. So without looking, we take 4, we give each player 4, and they place them on their recipe board face down. So 4, 4, 4 and 4 for a total of 16. The remaining 9 ones, they go face down around the perimeter of the board on the recipe pantry, the recipe shelves here. Okay, so all of them in total are 25. Now, the next thing that we do is we place the player chef hats on space 0 on the reputation score track, which keeps track of the glasses icon from the grandma, which is the victory points. Okay, over here, this is a loop, so if you get 29 points, then you continue looping around. Okay, and you impress the grandma, of course. The next thing we do is we shuffle the point tokens and place them on the board face down. Just to show you, these are the point tokens. They have different types of victory points, and you make a stack, shuffle them, make a stack, and you place them in their corresponding space on the center of the map board. The next thing that we do is we place the tea break tokens equal to the number of players between fields 5 and 6 on the score track. Tea breaks are a good time to chat with the family. Okay, so we take the tea break tokens, a total of equal to the number of players, and we place it here between the spot 5 and 6 on the track. Following that, the next thing we do is we prepare the active player basket with clue markers and clue type token and set aside for the starting player. So this is the active player basket. We place in there the clue tokens, okay, and the token which indicates if we're going for a type or for a weight in unit, and we place it nearby. This is going to be given to the active player each time and passed around. Following that, we prepare our player board. We can hold it in our hands and use a stand. So this is our player board. Okay, and it's glossy, so you write with the dry erase marker. You have a nice stand, so as I've shown you before, you can have it like that facing you. Okay, and we need to prepare it. So the way we prepare it, it's going to make sense more later, but for the moment, let's say that the top row is for your own name, so that's myself, and then following the player on your left, the player on your right, and the player on the right after that. Okay, so you're tracking the rest of the players. Okay, so this is your player board, but it's your note, so you need to keep it let's say hidden from the other players. Following that, the next thing that we do is we place a recipe board in front of us with the ingredients facing the other players. So the ingredient grids are facing the other players, okay, and the slots for our ingredients are facing us. We place them randomly and make sure that other players don't see them. We take our voting card, eraser marker, think markers and fingerprints, as you can see here, and we keep them, this is our voting card, close by. Having done that, keep in mind that in a 3-player game, you prepare the recipe board for imaginary 4th player and place their ingredient on it face up, and everybody can see the ingredients of the imaginary player. And there is a variant also for 2 players, which we're going to cover later. So there you have it. This is the setup of the game, and once this is done, we're ready to start. The player board. You will use your player board to track clues you give and receive. Let's look at the green player's player board. Okay. So this row contains all of the recipes ingredients that are in the game. You can find the ingredients there, okay, and on top also. Just take a closer look so that you can see that these ingredients are the same ingredients that you see on the tokens. There are a total of 25 of them. 9 total of ingredients, and there are a total of 25 combinations, tokens. More simplistically put, there are a total of 25 tokens, so 2 grapes, for example, 2 walnut, okay, 4 eggs, etc. So all of them are 25, and you have them there in this top row. The ingredients in this row are ordered by weight. Mint, let me show you again. Mint and grapes have 1 unit of weight. This is the lightest ingredient. Walnuts and strawberries have 2 units of weight, and this is after those. That's why you see they're coming second. Then we have the eggs, which is the only ingredient with 3 units of weight. Then we have apples and honey, which have 4 units of weight. And the most heavier ingredients are, of course, flour and cream, which the weight 5 units, as you can see there. Mint and grapes weight the same. Eggs are heavier than walnuts, and strawberries are lighter than flour, and so on. So you get the idea how this works. These are the players' recipes here. So you see this player board tracks. I wrote here me, and then the name of the purple player, or even better, purple player, so that it's easier to identify, blue player and red player for the rest of the players. And this row is for me, my recipe book, so this matches my recipe board here, or at least this is what it's trying to relate to: the purple player, the blue player and the red player. Okay, these are the player recipes. You use top space to track your recipe. Always you put yourself here on the top, and the next rows follow with the player to the left, then to the left, and so on. The recipe spaces have 4 squares, and they correspond to your 4 ingredients in each player's recipe. Each square on your player board has all the ingredients in it. You will use them to track the clues, and you will cross out individual ingredients when you receive clues here. Okay. Now it's important to note that we're going to come back to the player board, because we're going to focus on how you keep notes on when you get clues, etc. Also keep that in mind, but it's a very handy player board to keep track of everything during the course of the game. So let's focus on the recipe board here. For the sake of this video, I'm just going to rotate it so that you can see how it looks like, but the correct way is to have the grids pointing away from you towards the other players. Each recipe board has a plate on one side. You see there's a plate on the left, the way I look at it, okay, but if it's the opposite route, it's on my right, okay. Your player board has 2 plates respectively on each side, on the left and the right, and this is just to identify exactly the orientation of the player boards and the recipe boards and the recipe boards of yourself and the other players, so that you know exactly what are you referring to in terms of the slots, of the 4 slots, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Now that being said, on your player board, above each recipe, next to the name lines, are lines of the 9 ingredients. You will use them to mark the clues you get in pacts. We'll talk about that later, okay? But you see that you have them there, right? Okay. Now you can look at your recipe ingredients secretly. Make sure you don't show them to the other players. So I would reveal this one, and I would know that my first, okay, recipe, I have the plate to the left. That means I'm going to come here, and the way I see it, if I put the plate to the left, okay, I would circle this one, okay, but if I was having it the other way around, so let's say it's as it should be, pointing away, okay, that means that if I mark here my plate instead of here, that means that the plate here corresponds to the plate there. There is no plate on the other side, as you can see, and that means when I secretly check that this is strawberry, okay, I will come and circle strawberry here for me, okay. That's my own recipe, me. The second one, again, I do this secretly, so I don't leave them face up. I just, the way I do it is I check it and then put it back, okay. So strawberries for the first one, cream for the second one, that means cream here. The third one is flour, and the fourth one is honey. So the 4 secret ingredients for me are honey on the left, as you see, orientated as it is, flour, cream, and strawberries, okay. So it relates to this one here. So that's what you do. You look at the ingredient on the left, furthest from the plate, okay, you place it, you mark it, and that's it. You don't mark it here on your recipe board, you mark it on your player board, so the other players still don't know what are the 4 secret ingredients you have. Therefore, going back to your player board, you look at the top row here with ingredients and cross out all the ingredients from the recipe, from your recipe. That means I would cross out honey, okay, flour, cream, and strawberries. And in practice, this would be done by making an X on the strawberry, an X on one of the honey, one of the creams, and one of the flours. Okay, so this is how you do it. Sometimes you will cross out all of the ingredients of one type in the course of the game. Let's say I have managed in the course of the game to cross out all 3 strawberries. That's just an example. That means you would be just in luck in this case, or you have, if you did from the beginning, or if you managed to do it in the course of the game through deduction, you know that there is no more strawberries in the game. So at any point, if I cross out all the strawberries, I know that there are no more strawberries in the game, so no other player has them. Therefore, you can cross out strawberries on all of the other players' recipes here, okay, so you know they don't have it. If you haven't crossed out any type of the ingredient, don't worry, you'll cross them out soon when you receive some clues from the other players, and this is going to be the main course of the gameplay. Gameplay. First, let's focus on the turns. The starting player collects the active player basket, which we have prepared during setup, okay. It has all the clues and the type or weight token, etc. And the game starts. On a standard turn, the player gets 2 actions. First, which is optional, you can discard any one face-up pantry ingredient and replenish it with the new ingredient from the bag. and I can discard this one because I don't like it and draw one from the bag and place it back there. Okay, so it's always 9 visible. You do this if you hope to get an ingredient that is not in the pantry, or if you want to get rid of one ingredient, or most commonly if you are hoping the new ingredient will enable you to give a better clue when you give clues. The discarded ingredient is placed face up next to the board, and if the bag ever turns empty, you just take the ones that you have emptied, shuffle them into the bag and refill any discarded spaces as required. Then the second thing which you do, which is your main action, you give a clue and pick at the corresponding recipient ingredient on the recipe shelf. We'll talk about that in following, okay, how this is done when you pick once you give a clue. But for the moment, keep that in mind, that this is the main action. Actions are followed by a voting phase, and all players get the option to guess on the ingredients in other players' recipes using their voting cards and score points accordingly. We'll focus on that later, and this will be explained in a sec during the voting phase. But this is the nutshell and the description of a turn and how it goes. Giving clues. The players give clues with clue type token, which is this one, okay, and one of the clue markers, so either the green, the red, or the white. The clue focuses on one ingredient in the player recipe and can be given based on the ingredient type or weight, depending on how you place it, which side face up. To give a clue about ingredient in your recipe, let's say I want to give it about ingredient, not about weight unit. So if I want to give about ingredient type, I just take it and place the clue token next to the ingredient with the appropriate side up. Practically how this is done, I want to give a clue about the ingredient type, not the weight, and I want to give it about this ingredient over here. So it's pointing here, so it's all about this one, and the clue I'm going to give is about what type of ingredient this is, not about what weight in units it has. Okay, so my second from left to right slot, I am going to or depending on how you look at the plate, but anyway, for this spot I'm going to give a clue about the type of the ingredient, and then I'm going to choose one of the clue markers and place it next to a row and a column in the pantry. This will tell everybody how your ingredient compares with the ingredients in that row or column that the clue token is pointing to. So let's see an example. Okay, I already shown that which type of which slot on my recipe book I'm interested in. I'm giving the clue about, and it's going to be, as I mentioned, about its type of ingredient. And let's say I'm placing this clue token, okay, the check. Let's say I'm placing it here. That means the clue I'm giving is about this row, and it indicates that the clue on my recipe board that this marker is pointing to, it's either honey, walnuts, or eggs. Okay. Another way I could have given a clue could be saying that I place it here, and I could say that, look, my clue that I'm pointing towards, it's neither an apple nor walnuts. Okay, so you can exclude those two types for my recipe. Or if I was lucky enough, I could just have said that, look, my pointed out ingredient, it's either apple or walnuts. So already I'm giving a very good clue about my second slot. Okay, so that's one way to give clue. Or you can decide to give a clue, let's say again for the second slot, about the weight of the unit, and then in that case you're going to use this marker and the way you're placing it. Okay, so let's place it here. That means that my ingredient that I'm pointing with the second one in my recipe board, which I'm pointing with this one, this ingredient is lighter than the ingredients shown in maybe that's a bad example, so let's say it goes like that. Okay, or it could be, yeah, could be an ingredient of 1. Okay, yeah, either grapes, for example. Yeah, so that means when I'm placing it like that, my ingredient is lighter, has lower weight in units than the ingredients here, which are unit 4, unit 3 and unit 2. That means you immediately understand that my ingredient it's unit 1. That means automatically that you understand that it's either grapes, yeah, or the other one, mint, which is also a great clue. Or if I have selected to give it like that, you know that my unit that I'm pointing out is heavier, my ingredient heavier in weight units than those. That means heavier than the 4 unit ingredient. That means it's the only one heavier than 4 is the 5. That means my ingredient is either cream or flour in the slot 2. So very cool ways to give ingredients, but keep in mind, in general, you wish to give good clues. Communicating your ingredient gets you points, so you have to make an effort to give good clues for your recipe board slots. Picking at ingredients in the recipe shelves. So you give a clue, you can pick up then at the hidden recipe ingredient next to your clue marker you place. As you do, you also place your fingerprint on the ingredient. This way you know what recipe ingredients you have already looked at, and as well as what other players have looked at during the game. Okay, meaning that I'm going to come here, secretly check the ingredient under here, which I see it's walnuts. That means 1 token of walnuts, it's out of the mix of 25 for everybody. Okay, so you can make your deduction, and then what I'm doing is I'm placing on top of that my fingerprint to indicate that I have already seen that. And the same goes for the other players. If someone has placed fingerprints on different let's say tokens, you know what they have seen themselves. Okay, don't forget to cross out the ingredients you learn about at the top of your player board in the row with all the ingredients. Okay, so I found out, for example, that what needs to be crossed out, and then I need to go on the top row and cross out respectively accordingly. Sometimes you will cross out the last ingredient of one type. Okay, so in this case I've seen that under here, that means I have walnuts. Okay, so I'm going to go here just to make it clear and just cross out one of the 2 walnut of the 25 shelf recipe tokens. Okay, again, sometimes you'll cross out the last ingredient of one type, and therefore you learn that there are no ingredients of that type in other players' recipes anymore, so you can go and cross it out in other recipes. Okay, so if I manage to cross out walnut here, because either I have 1 walnut and 1 more or 2 more are crossed out from the shelf spots around the board, that means I can go and cross out walnut in all other players' grids. Okay, from the recipes, so that's cool. Marking clues. It's very important that you mark both the clues you receive, and this of course will help you deduct the other player's ingredients as well as the ones you give yourself. This will help you remember what information you have already communicated and give the next clues that complement it, because you want other players to get good guesses about a good understanding about your clues. The tactic that is proposed is to cross things out. You look at the clues and figure out what it says this ingredient is not, then cross out all of that out with X's. And the second advice is to circle an ingredient only when you are certain it's the right one. For example, at the beginning of you circle the ingredients in your own recipe as you have seen during setup, and because you know 100% that they are what you only have information for yourself because it's your own secret recipe. But you can also circle the ingredients where you are sure that you know that the other players have, usually because you crossed out everything else from deduction, or because that ingredient has already been revealed, for example. Okay, so let's see how this works in practice with an example. So again, let's say that we are focusing on the third ingredient from the left, so 1, 2, 3, and we're going to point out here, so I'm going to say that the clue is about the type of the ingredient. Okay, so that's what it is. So the clue is about the third ingredient from the left, that is the third ingredient from the plate icon, I remind you. Okay, and what I'm going to do now is focus on the token. So let's say, for the benefit of the example, that there was a tick here. That means that you know the ingredient is the same type as one of the ingredients in the column. So you know that this ingredient that I just pointed out, it's either an apple or walnut, because you have two apples, so there's no third option. So either an apple or walnut. So this is a good clue. You're down to two ingredients already. Okay, so you pick up the hidden recipe ingredients on the shelf next to the clue marker. You don't tell to the other players what it is, but you cross it out in the top row of your player board and place the fingerprint on that ingredient, so that all knows that you know that. Okay, and then you mark it on a recipe board, first on her recipe board, and locate the third ingredient from the left. Okay, so it would be from the left the third, 1, 2, 3. Okay, so here you are going to cross out all of them but apples and walnuts. Okay, so you would go here and you would going to cross out everything but apples and walnuts. So you will also mark this clue on your recipe board, so that you know that this information you have given for the next clues. Okay, and then you're going to continue moving forward. After the clue phase, what happens is we proceed to a voting phase. We'll explain how this is done later. Okay, but for the moment this will conclude the active player's turn, and they would pass the active player basket to the next player, so that they continue. So this becomes straightforward after one point what type of clues is best to give. Okay, so you're trying to give as good information as possible. So the rule comes with a variety of examples. You have at least 7 examples, so you can really get a feeling on how giving clues really works like. So this is very, very useful. In reality, we would often be able to find out all of the ingredients in less than 8 rounds. Okay, so because we also have some information from our own ingredients, from other players, the recipe shelves and pacts, so the combination of those gives us the deduction clues we want to find out information about the ingredients. So this is how the main course of the game works during the active player's turn, but we have the voting phase. Each turn after the active player gives a clue, then after it is registered by all other players, there is a voting phase. So this is optional, of course, but let's see how this works. So the voting phase, where you have it's optional, as I said, then you have two options. The first option is, if you're not sure, you can have a theory, for example, about an ingredient, but if you're not sure, you say you think you know it. You can do this up to 4 times in the whole game, and you use the think markers to do it. You use those markers here. Okay. If you're right, this will get you 1 victory point, and if you're wrong, you don't get to lose any points, so you don't get any negative points. The other option is, if you know for sure, or if you're feeling lucky and you're going to push your luck and you want to gamble, you can declare you know an ingredient for certainty and collect it from the pantry. If you're right, this will get you 2 victory points or 4 victory points, but if you're wrong, it will get you -1 victory point, which you have negative points in this case. You mark your vote on your voting card. Okay, you always write the name of the player and mark the location of the ingredient you wish to vote about, the 4 squares that you find here, and where the plate icon is on the recipe board. This way there can be no mistake on identifying which one you're referring to. Okay, so let's say my clue is for the information, my vote is for Anne, and let's say the plate is here. Okay, and this is the number, the exact spot for which I'm referring to. Okay, So that's how you mark it. And the difference is, again, you have to write the name here for sure, okay? So if you think you know it and you want to collect it, you mark it below in the pantry grid. You notice the gradient needs to be present in the pantry in order for you to collect it, of course. It needs to be there, otherwise you cannot collect it. You mark the space at which it is located in the pantry, rotate your voting card if necessary to align with the recipe shelves on the voting card, with the recipe shelves on the game board. Okay, so that means it should be like that. Okay, and that means if I'm focusing on, let's say, the flour there, my here, my icon should be there in the bottom right, like that. Okay. So this is how I do it. If the ingredient is not in the pantry, you can still think it now and collect it later, but keep in mind that this way you give information to the other players. That's if you know it, okay? If you think you know it, you just circle the ingredient in the cloud above, here. So you circle it here. You think you know it, like that, okay? So this is how this goes. So this is your voting card. You're going to use it during voting. Okay. The thing can collect votes. Do different types of vote. If I think about it, or if I know and I want to collect it, are mutually exclusive, meaning you can only do one of the two. You cannot do both. Okay. And when all players are happy with their choices, you can decide to introduce a timer if you want, and then you simultaneously reveal your votes. Okay, and once you've done that, then you proceed with resolving the votes. So how you resolve the votes? First, you resolve any players that voted think. They take one of their think markers and place it on the recipe board in the appropriate space on their grid next to the ingredient they have a theory about. Okay. More than one player can share the same theory. In that case, you stack the markers. The order doesn't matter, of course, and different players can also have different theories about one ingredient. However, one player can only have one theory about every ingredient. The points for thinking will be awarded when the corresponding ingredients are revealed. And the next thing you do is you resolve the players that voted collect. The order is important here because of the point tokens. So start with the player whose turn it is, resolve all the collect votes about the recipe. The sub-order for doing that is not important, of course, and then you proceed like that. So let's see how this works in practice. Let's again think about Anne, okay, and her recipe. You choose one of the collect votes. Is the vote correct? If yes, Anne reveals the ingredient. Rotate the collected pantry ingredient 25 degrees to mark it. It will be collected from the pantry. Don't remove it right away, as other people may also use it too. If only one player found the ingredient, they get 4 victory points and move their chef hat on the score track accordingly to indicate that on the chef track. If more than one player gave the correct answer, each of them moves 2 VPs instead on the score track. And scores points tokens, which are described as following. You also resolve any think cubes on the grid next to the revealed ingredients, and any players who had the correct theory get 1 victory point and move their chef hats also, because they had the same correct opinion, 1 token, 1 spot forward. If the answer is no, Anne does not show the ingredient and does not tell us what it is. Any player that presented the answer moves -1 VP on the score track because they have negative victory points, and everybody has learned something about the ingredient and can vote about it on the next turn. Anne does not get any point tokens. The markers are not resolved. We'll continue with this resolving the collect votes around the table, and when all of them are resolved, we remove the rotated ingredients from the pantry and replenish them from the bag. If the bag ever runs out, we replenish it and discard the ingredients. If there is only one player with hidden recipe ingredients left, the end game is triggered. Okay? And the voting phase, of course, is completed, and then if the game hasn't ended, we proceed with the next player starting the round with taking the active player token basket, and so on and so on. The point tokens. Each time someone correctly knows one of your ingredients, they immediately score on the score track. At the same time, you also gain points for communicating the ingredient, but those points are not scored on the score track right away, but through the point tokens that you see here. These are the point tokens. You take the top 3 point tokens from there, look at them and choose one to keep. You return the other 2 at the discard pile there. If the point tokens pile ever runs out, you shuffle the point tokens of the discard and place a fresh stack on the left from players where players can draw from. The consequence of this is that the tokens that remain in the pile will get worse with every replenishment. This is why you want to be you want the other players to figure out your ingredients quickly. Okay, so this means 3 victory points at the end, 2 victory points, 1 victory point. This means 1 victory point, and you can pick at one of the ingredients on the recipe shelves. 2 victory points and you can pick one of the ingredients, or 1 victory point and you can pick 2 ingredients on the recipe shelf. There are 2 types of point tokens, as I said. The ones that give points directly, marked with a glass icon, you keep them hidden and score them as victory points at the end of the game. The other type are the points that give you 2 options. If you keep it for the upper part, which is the permanent points, or if you score less than 1 point, but you also get to pick at 2 recipe ingredients on the recipe shelf. In that case, you reveal the token, pick at the appropriate number of ingredients on the recipe shelf, and score the points on the score race track, chef track immediately. And then you discard the point token and move it out of the game. You can choose option 2 anytime during the game, on your turn or on someone else's turn, and pick at the ingredients and score points immediately after you reveal the token. You don't have to do it at the time you collected it, of course. Breaks and Pacts. Break tokens are located on the player board between fields 5 and 6 on the score track. Take one the first time you move from field 5 to field 6 on the score track, the chef track. You could theoretically move from field 5 to 6 more than once time. If you get any negative points, you get a break token only the first time you cross it. The break will happen at the end of the turn. This is the time to try to get some information from the fellow players and make some pacts. You have the chance to ask one player one question. Do you have this type of ingredient in your recipe? For example, you ask this by circling the ingredient at the bottom of your voting board. Okay, so let's say I want to ask my player on my left if they have apples as the ingredient. I would circle that, again, not at the top with a cloud, at the bottom. Okay, and then I pass it to the player that I want to inquire in a way that other players do not see what I'm asking. Okay, their answer will be either a yes or no, so a check mark or a cross. So if they have it, they need to make a tick. If they don't have it, they need to answer with an X and give it back to you. Okay, so you will know if it is yes or no by their answer, which is indicated in this square. The answer is no if they don't have any ingredient of the marked type in the recipe, for example. You can mark their answers on your player board. Go back again to your player board and make the necessary adjustments so that you have capture the information you acquired. If you get a yes, you circle the ingredient and remember that it will also be the at least one of those 4 squares on the recipe. You don't know which one though. Maybe you can even determine where, if the ingredient is crossed out in 3 or 4 out of 4 squares. If the answer is no, you cross the ingredient in the line and all of the 4 recipes. That means if the red player on my left told me that they don't have any apple, I would go here and cross out the apple for them. Okay, so this is a nice way to quickly gather this information. There is no voting phase after the tea break, and the play continues with the next player's turn. That's the only exception where you don't get a voting phase. Now, using the tea break tokens to swap pantry ingredients. You can use them once you have collected them to swap pantry ingredients. You keep the collected tea break tokens and you can use them anytime on your turn or before the voting phase on someone else's turn to change the pantry ingredients. When you declare you want to use it, you can theoretically replace all of the pantry ingredients, but each player, including you, may reserve a row or a column that is left the same. Okay, sometimes you don't want to reserve a row or column that contains an ingredient you wish to collect or one that allows you to give a clue you wish to give. You do so by placing your erase marker on it Okay, so just moving there to show you. Say I'm reserving this, for example, okay, or I'm reserving this. They may even choose not to place a marker, so I don't want to reserve anything. And when everybody is satisfied, the rows and columns with the raised markers are left alone, while all the other pantry ingredients are discarded and replenished with new ingredients from the bag. Okay, so you replace them with ones fresh from the bag. So that's the way actually it's done, and it's a nice way to bring more pantry ingredients there, but you have to have one tea break token and spend it after declaring to do so. Asking a clue question. If all of your recipe ingredients are revealed, you don't give any more clues. Instead, you ask other players questions. On your turn during action 2, giving a clue, use the clue markers on another player's hidden ingredient in the same way as you would use them to give a clue about that ingredient. You can also pick at the appropriate recipe shelf ingredient. Once you set them, that player will look at the clue and say yes, that is correct, or no, that is not correct. Based on their ingredient, everybody sees the clue and hears their answer, and you can all mark it on your player boards. The end of the game and winner. The end game is triggered when all players but one have all of the recipe ingredients revealed. After that, the play continues for almost a full round. So each of the players, but the player whose turn the end game was triggered at the end of their turn, that means gets one final turn. If at any point all of the ingredients of the last player are revealed, the game ends. If they are not, and they remain hidden until the end of the game, that is valid too. The player with the hidden ingredients does not score point tokens for their hidden ingredients, and the other players don't get points for thinking or uncovering them. At the end of the game, each player reveals their victory points on their unused point tokens and moves their player chef hat accordingly on the reputation score track. The player with the most victory points is the winner, and in case of a tie, the player with more victory points on their unused point tokens wins. I said that there is a two-player variant. In a two-player, each player takes two recipe boards. Players alternate between giving clues and asking clue questions, and they score points a bit differently, which is going to be described later, and it's going to be further released from the company once they have concluded this type of the two-player variant. So there you have it. This is everything you need to know about secret recipe. Hope you enjoyed this video. I'm a sucker for deduction games, and I'm thinking that if you're looking at this video, if you're checking this video, and if you heard the word deduction already from the introduction, it's something that you are also enjoying. This is a great game for deduction lovers worldwide, because it's a game which has a lot of interesting and easy gameplay in terms of rules, but also it offers nice thinking, nice deduction, a lot of ruling out things, and all of that through a fantastic theme. You're trying to find out the secret ingredients of the recipe of the other players and score more victory points out of it. The way this game is done, it's very elegant. It's very easy to give clues about a row and a column, what does the row has, doesn't have, compared to a specific ingredient from your secret recipe, also if it weighs more or less. So I like the fact that both the type of ingredient and the weight in weight units is included in the clue making decision. On top of that, add the presence or a non-presence with the tick or the X, the red X, which means not, and the marker which indicates if you have more or less in terms of weight. Combine that, it gives you opportunities to making really good clues and getting people to find out more about your recipe, secret recipe, because the more you find out about your recipe correctly and the more they vote about it, the more victory points you're going to get. So the game is very straightforward in terms of rules, very easy to understand, but I think it's really interesting, challenging, has a lot of satisfaction. It takes 8 or 9 rounds to get the clues out from a secret recipe to understand what the secret ingredients are, but this is done in a very elegant way, with nice pace and very interesting choices. And of course you're going to be using the nice system that they have with a player board, with the dry erase markers to easily capture everything, and with a simple glance understand what you have asked, what other people have crossed out that they have in the recipes, and find out what's going on. Super fun, highly enjoyable. If you like deduction games, this is definitely a game that you should try. If you haven't tried deduction games and you like visually appealing themes like cooking, recipes, etc., why not just start with this one, because it has a very beautiful table presence, I should say, and the theme is nice. You're just thinking out about delicious ingredients: apples, honey, flour, cream, strawberries, walnuts, etc., on the secret recipe, and the way they present it on the central board, as well as the art on the tiles, the player boards, etc., everything looks appealing. It's just that I really enjoy, while I play, looking on the boards of the other players from the back of the side, which have their, I don't know, their elegant dessert depicted, and it really gives a very nice immersion into what you're trying to do and why you're trying to deduce the secret recipes and win the game. Very enjoyable game. Definitely check it out if you like deduction games. Very interesting. And also, if you haven't tried any deduction games, or if you want to get into nice deduction games, it's a good opportunity to start with this one, because it offers excellent use of this main mechanism in a very elegant and brilliant system. So thanks for watching.